Okay. Have you ever uh, felt like sometimes your work life is, like a chaotic, overflowing river? Like you're constantly, battling against the current of like inefficiencies and miscommunications. Yeah.
Like,
Like, remember that time you spent what felt like forever on hold with customer service, right? And you just bounce between departments and you still don't even have your issue resolved. It's like navigating a maze blindfolded. But you know what? There's a flip side to all this. There's this whole world of service excellence that honestly can transform not just businesses, but like our everyday interactions. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. We're diving deep into The Toyota Way to Service Excellence by Jeffrey Linker. And it really digs into how principles from, well, you guessed it, Toyota, right? How those principles from their manufacturing success can be applied to any organization that wants to achieve, well, service excellence. One of the things that really stood out to me in this book was this like unexpected connection between this 19th century Japanese loom inventor and like modern service principles. So let's unpack that, okay? The book kicks off with the foundation, long-term thinking, and seeing the system. Now you might be thinking, what does that even mean? Well, a lot of organizations get stuck in what the book calls mechanistic thinking. They see their organization as like this big machine with, interchangeable parts. But the key takeaway here is systems thinking, right? It's about seeing the organization as like a living, interconnected entity. So instead of just seeing a forest as like a bunch of trees, you're starting to understand that web of relationships between the trees, the soil, the animals, everything. It's seeing the bigger picture, you know, how everything fits together. This idea of systems thinking really hit home for me when I was, let's just say, trying to assemble some furniture from, well, one of those infamous flat pack stores. I was so focused on like each individual step, I totally missed the bigger picture. I ended up with like, extra screws, a wonky shelf. It was a disaster. And the book argues that this short-sightedness, can really hold back service excellence. It stresses how important having a long-term vision is and investing in people, not just going after those quick profits. It's about building something that lasts, something that delivers real value to the customer. And there's this fascinating case study in the book about this credit transaction processing company called NL Services. And they were all about like those short-term fixes, right? Just fighting fires all the time, no clear purpose, just scrambling to put those fires out. And as you can imagine, it was total chaos. Their service was terrible, and their employees were, well, let's just say, not exactly thrilled to be working there. Then you got Southwest Airlines, which has always impressed me as a company that really gets customer service.
Yeah.
They've got this counterintuitive approach, no assigned seating, no fancy meals, but they're all about their people and their purpose, connecting people to what matters. And guess what? They always rank high in customer satisfaction. So we've talked about, long-term thinking and systems thinking, but what about actually understanding the customer, right? I mean, that's pretty crucial if we're aiming for service excellence.
And the book breaks down service into these four neat quadrants: mass goods distribution, standard experience, and personalized customer service. And it's interesting to see how different companies approach service, depending on their specific quadrant. So you've got like the Ritz-Carlton, which is like the definition of personalized experience, right?
Yeah.
They're all about that luxurious service. They're anticipating your every need, making you feel like royalty. And then you've got United Airlines, which has, had some struggles with customer service. They're more standard experience, trying to standardize the experience for everyone, which could be tough when you're dealing with something as complex as air travel. And then you've got Whole Foods and Wegmans. They're both in that mass goods distribution quadrant, but Wegmans has found the way to stand out with exceptional customer service. And they don't even have like a distinct niche or anything. It's like they get it, Even when you're dealing with high volume and self-service, that human connection, that little extra effort can really make all the difference. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the power of process, specifically flow and pull.
Mm-hmm. Those are two concepts that are like at the heart of the Toyota way. And I think we can all relate to this, right? We all want things to flow smoothly, whether it's a work project or a trip to the grocery store, or even just getting ready in the morning, right? And the book really pushes the importance of creating a smooth, uninterrupted flow of value to the customer. And it made me think about my own experiences with, well, let's just say less than stellar service. Like I remember this one time I was getting a new washing machine installed. It was a nightmare. The delivery guys were late, they left a mess, and the installation took forever. It was like every step of the way was designed to create like friction and frustration, the total opposite of flow. And then on the flip side, there's this great story in the book about this Swedish Volvo dealership that actually achieved 1 hour service. And they did it by, streamlining their process using visual management boards. Everything was so organized, so efficient. It was like watching a well choreographed dance. Talking about a smooth flow of value to the customer, right? And then there are pull systems, which are kind of the opposite of those traditional push systems, where services are initiated based on some predetermined schedule. With pull systems, things are initiated based on actual customer demand. So instead of saying, here's what we're offering, take it or leave it, you're saying, what do you need?
Yeah.
How can we help you best? And the book gives this example of Zingerman's Mail Order, this incredible food company that's super flexible with their tack time, the pace of work to meet customer demand. They've even got this amazing board in their call center to visually manage all their tasks and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. It's genius. But creating a smooth flow and responding to customer demand, it's not just about fancy systems and boards. It's also about something that might seem a bit, well, counterintuitive. Standardization. I know when you hear standardization, you think, oh, rules, regulations. That's going to stifle creativity and employee engagement, right? But hold on a second, because the book totally busts that myth. It explains there's this huge difference between coercive bureaucracy, where rules are just imposed from the top down, and enabling bureaucracy. That's where standards are used to empower employees and actually improve the whole process. And it reminded me of this time, back in college when I was working on a group project. And we had this one team member, well, let's just say they were a bit controlling, wanted to dictate every single detail, every decision. And guess what? It totally backfired. People felt stifled. Their creativity got squashed. And the project ended up, well, not our best work, let's just say that. But then there's this other group project. We had this leader who, instead of like forcing their ideas on everyone, they facilitated this collaborative process. And you know what? Everyone felt heard and valued. We actually developed standards together, held each other accountable. It was amazing. The project just flowed. Everyone was engaged. We ended up with this awesome result. It was great. And the book, it used the example of NL Services, right? Remember them, that chaotic credit transaction processing company.
So after that lean pilot, a new exec takes over and brings in this like big shot consultancy, lean mechanics. They come in with their stopwatches and they're like, you need standard work. Everyone do it the same way. But they just like completely missed the point. They just imposed all these rigid standards without even understanding the work or getting the employees involved. No wonder it backfired. Yeah. And then there's this company, Service for You, and they're doing an awesome job with this enabling bureaucracy thing. They get everyone involved in developing the standard work, like those time studies they did for the direct deposit transfer process. It was all collaborative. It made sense to the employees, and it actually made things better, improved quality and efficiency. It's like they get that standardization isn't about creating robots. It's about empowering people to do their best work. But here's the thing. Processes and systems, they're only as good as the people actually running them, right? And the book makes it very clear that people are the heart of service excellence. And it's not just about throwing money at them, those extrinsic rewards. It's about intrinsic motivation. It's that feeling of satisfaction you get from doing a good job, from being a part of something bigger than yourself, It reminds me of this time I was volunteering at a local animal shelter. We weren't getting paid or anything, but we were so passionate about helping the animals. And you know what? It was one of the most rewarding experiences ever.
And the book talks about companies like, well, of course, Toyota, and then Menlo Innovations and Zingerman's. They've all built these amazing cultures where people are motivated, intrinsically motivated to learn, to grow, and to solve problems. Speaking of problem solving, get this. There's this whole concept called Toyota Kata. It's like martial arts, but for like continuous improvement. It's about developing those scientific thinking skills and making that continuous improvement part of your DNA, you know. And it starts with this, like starter kata, the basic pattern to practice. And then there's deliberate practice with coaching and feedback. And the key is building that self-efficacy, you know, that feeling of, hey, I can do this. I can actually make a difference.
And the book's got this great story about this guy named Fred. He's trying to like change all his unhealthy habits. And it's amazing how this Toyota Kata can be applied to like personal challenges as well as, you know, business challenges. But with all this talk about systems and processes and continuous improvement, it can seem kind of overwhelming at first, right? Like, where do I even start? Well, the book does a really good job of breaking it all down into these manageable steps. It stresses the importance of starting small, experimenting, learning as you go, and adapting. It's not about doing everything all at once. It's about taking these little steps towards excellence, right? And, you know, one of the things that really stuck out to me was the emphasis the book puts on leadership. Like how important it is for leadership to create a culture of service excellence. And it's not just about having some vision, you know, it's about actually living those values, walking the talk, and inspiring other people to do the same. And it made me think about this, well, not so great leadership experience I had at a previous job. Our manager was, let's just say, not exactly a role model for service excellence. They were more about barking orders than like empowering people, you know what I mean? And it created this toxic work environment. Everyone was afraid to take risks or even suggest improvements. But then I had this other manager who was the complete opposite. They were like a true servant leader, always willing to roll up their sleeves and help, always encouraging feedback, you know, always wanting new ideas. And it made all the difference. People felt valued. They wanted to do a good job. The whole team thrived. It was great. And the book talks about how Toyota, they've got this unique approach to leadership. They're not about the superstar lone wolf type. They're all about teamwork, developing people from the ground up. They believe everyone, even those in seemingly simple, repetitive jobs, they can contribute and improve. And I think that's a really powerful message. And this focus on people goes beyond just the company itself, you know. Toyota likes to integrate their suppliers, even their customers, into their culture of continuous improvement. It's about building strong relationships with shared values and a commitment to excellence. And you know how companies are always talking about culture, like it's this magical thing you can just sprinkle on top of an organization. Well, Toyota has this concept they call deliberate culture. It's not just some fluffy buzzword. It's about intentionally building a culture that supports your goals. It's about making sure everyone understands the expectations, the values, and how to actually live those values in their work every day. And this deliberate culture stuff, it ties right into those micro-level people principles the book talks about. You know, like developing those scientific thinking skills, coaching those continuous improvement teams, and figuring how to balance extrinsic and intrinsic rewards. It's like weaving together all these threads to make this like tapestry of service excellence, right? Speaking of weaving, remember that Japanese loom inventor, Sakichi Toyota, that's his name. He was all about building quality into everything he made. He even invented a loom that would stop itself if a thread broke. Talk about problem solving, right? And his values, like contributing to society, putting the customer first, respecting people, and continuous improvement, they became the foundation of the Toyota way. It's like his legacy lives on in this huge global company. And one way Toyota encourages this improvement mindset is through something called kata. Remember those practice routines? Well, they use these kata to develop skills and habits for both individuals and teams. They break down these complicated tasks into smaller, manageable steps, and then people practice those steps over and over again till they become second nature. And get this, the book talks about how this kata approach can even be used to coach leaders. It's like a leadership development program built on those continuous improvement principles. Pretty cool, right? Let's talk about how this people-centric approach plays out in like real-life companies. The book has some fascinating examples like Menlo Innovations. They're a software development company. They're doing really well with this unique collaborative approach they've got. They actually pair programmers together to write code. And get this, they involve the customers in the development process every step of the way. They even offer to take part of their payment in equity in their clients' companies. It's like they're that invested in their client success, you know. And then there's Zingerman's, right? They're a food company, but there's obsessed with customer service as like any five-star hotel. They've got this whole philosophy they call Zingerman's Zing. It's all about going above and beyond, creating those wow moments for the customers, building this culture of well zing. They even have like 5 stupid ways to lose customers with countermeasures, like recipes for each. Pretty clever. And they're really into open book management. They share all their financial information with their employees at those monthly all-staff meetings and those weekly department reviews. It's all about transparency and creating a sense of ownership for everyone. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, these companies are great and all, but they're kind of unique, right? Well, the book makes this convincing argument that these people-centric principles, they can work in any organization. Remember, Elisa, that Finnish telecom company? They went through this massive transformation, focusing on customer satisfaction and engaging their employees. And guess what? Their profits went through the roof. It's like proof that investing in people and continuous improvement really pays off. But it's not always easy, right? I mean, changing ingrained habits and mindsets, it can be a real challenge. The book talks about how our brains are actually wired to resist change, you know. It talks about those mistake pathways that keep us stuck in the same old patterns. The key is to be aware of those biases and then, deliberately practice those new behaviors. It's like learning a new language or a musical instrument. It takes time, effort, and a good coach. Okay, let's wrap things up with a story about National Taxi Limo. They're trying to create a culture of service excellence in the, let's just say not so glamorous world of taxis, right? I was talking to Joe, one of the partners, and he told me about their journey. They're facing tons of challenges, drivers who are used to working on their own, customers with high expectations, and, the whole, logistics nightmare of running a taxi service. But they're really committed to their vision. Every ride, on time, every time, working together. And they're using the principles from this book as their guide. They've implemented, like, those visual management boards to track their progress, standard work for their drivers, and, they do those daily huddles to keep everyone on the same page. And they're careful about choosing partners who share their values too. They actually chose not to buy a car from a certain dealership because they didn't feel like, the people there were really on board with their philosophy. It's like they're really putting their money where their mouth is, you know what I mean? Walking the talk. And here's the thing that really got me about their story is that they're not just focusing on their customers. They're focused on their drivers too. They understand that happy, engaged drivers lead to, happy and satisfied customers, right? It's like they've created this positive feedback loop where everyone wins. And it's all rooted in those core principles of, respect, continuous improvement, and that commitment to working together. So National Taxi Limo, they brought in this hotshot consultant, right? Mike Gallagher. He promised to implement lean across the entire company in like 6 months. They even hired this big consultancy, Lean Mechanics. Sound familiar? It's like the NL Services situation all over again, right? And guess what? It didn't work out very well. They tried to force these cookie cutter solutions on different parts of the company without really understanding the work of the people doing it. It was, a recipe for disaster. But here's the thing. Joe and his partners, they learned from that mistake. They realized that real change, lasting service excellence, it has to come from within, from the people actually doing the work, And, that brings us to what I think is like the biggest challenge of all, changing the mindset of leaders. It's easy to get stuck in that command and control mode, right? Especially if you've been successful doing things a certain way. But the book makes a really good point. To really achieve service excellence, leaders have to let go of the need to be the expert, the one with all the answers. They need to become coaches, mentors, learners themselves even. And it's not about just telling people what to do, you know. It's about asking good questions, empowering your team to come up with solutions, creating that space where it's okay to experiment, even fail sometimes. It reminded me of this one time I was leading a project at work. And I was so focused on, making sure everything was perfect. I ended up like micromanaging everyone, stifling their creativity, really. Like I was afraid to let go. And you know what? It just created this tension, this fear. And the project suffered because of it. But then I had this amazing mentor. And they helped me see that, my job as a leader wasn't to control everything. It was to create the conditions where the team could succeed. And it was like this, like a light bulb went off. I started focusing on empowering the team, giving them the support and resources they needed. And you know what? Stepping back, letting them shine. And the results were amazing. The team was so much more engaged, more creative. They came up with solutions I never would have even thought of. It was a real turning point for me, as a leader. And the book highlights how important it is for leaders to actually go to the Gemba, the place where the work happens.
Observe, ask questions, really understand the process from the ground up. And this can be, uncomfortable for some leaders. So it's like admitting that you don't have all the answers. But that vulnerability, that's where the real growth happens. And that's exactly what Joe and his partners at National Taxi Limo are doing. They're leading by example, embracing that continuous improvement, creating a culture where everyone feels valued and they feel empowered to contribute, and it's working. They're seeing real improvements in their metrics. Their customers are happier, their drivers are more engaged. It's like this win-win-win situation, but the journey never really ends. Right?
Yep.
Service excellence isn't a destination. It's like this ongoing process, learning, adapting, always improving. So what does this all mean for you, right? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into, the world of service excellence? Well, first, it's about shifting your mindset, seeing your organization not as like this machine, but as this like complex living system.
And that means understanding how all the different parts, interact and influence each other. Second, invest in your people, develop their skills, build a culture of continuous improvement, and figure out how to tap into that intrinsic motivation. Remember, happy employees equals happy customers. And third, embrace flow and pull. Right? Create that smooth customer-centric service experience. That means getting rid of waste, streamlining those processes, and responding to customer needs quickly, efficiently. I know this is a lot to take in, but remember, just take it one step at a time. Experiment with one principle, one small change, see what happens. And here's a final thought for you today, Juan. If you could pick one thing, just one thing from this episode to implement in your own work, what would it be and why? Think about it. Play around with it. And let's see what kind of magic we can create together, Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep striving for that service excellence.